Hey everyone, this is Baylor Ray, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to do more with WordPress. I think is how I titled the video. And what I'm going to do is I found this answer on or this question on Stack Overflow that said, "How do I display custom fields in WordPress in alphabetical order?" And when my immediate thought was, well, how are you going to do it? So I found this code. I'm looking at it and thinking, well, this is not a good way of doing this at all, because if the code is working, but this code doesn't work for a few reasons. But specifically, what would happen if it was working code is that you would find all of these posts from the database, then you would loop over every single post, and then you would query the database again for each one of these posts to pull the last name out of it. And then what he was trying to do is he was pulling all the last names. Like if you had Steven Spielberg, it's the only director I can think of. If you had Steven Spielberg, for instance, then Spielberg might have directed 2 or 3 movies that you've given reviews on. So you'd only want to show that once. So then you'd run this array unique. And then he looped through each one of these posts to, and I don't know what this was going to do, but it's going to do something. And then he was finally going to display it, and basically the goal was to make it where you could find all of the last names in alphabetical order and pull them out. But this code's it's not right, so I got most of it completed, and then he asked a question, and I decided that what I would do is make a screencast just to show the entire building process, because it's going to do 2 things. It's going to, one, for this guy specifically, he's not used to building a 7 PHP. He's going to be able to learn it. And 2, you're going to get to see how somebody like me, when I'm given a challenge or whatever like this and I have to build something, how I go through and I do it all. So that's what we're going to do. And to do that, I've created an empty WordPress installation. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to put in some dummy posts. And what I want to do for that is I've created some JSON here that I can probably put up if you want to have this, but it doesn't take a lot to build these posts or whatever, or these movies. And basically all I've done is I've given a title of a movie, and it's the first one, Smokey the Bandit, and I've given the first name of the director, which is Hal, and last name Needham. And you can see I've done this 7 times, and I've used this JSON viewer so you can actually read this a lot easier. And you can see what it's done is it said this is an array, and it has 7 items, and the first item is an object with 3 properties, and they're all the same thing. So let's go ahead and use this dummy post into the database that gives us this. The first thing that I'm going to do, though, before I do that, is I want to show you, he wanted to add this at WordPress. What that means is I'm going to create a new post, and this is where I'd put in the title, probably of the movie, a review of such and such movie. And what we can do is we can display custom fields here, and I can create one called last name, and this replicates what he had here, last name. And I can put this last name in, and then I could put in like Spielberg, and I think I misspelled that. So that would put in that director's last name here, and that's exactly what a custom field is. And what we're going to do is we're going to use 2 things. We're going to take this JSON, and for the last name, for the first name, we're going to create a custom field called first name. What I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through all of these posts, and I'm going to create the post using this WP insert post function provided by WordPress. And I'm going to scroll down to the example they give because it's a lot shorter and it's easier to see what you need. We're just going to pass in the post title and the status and make it published, and the post author. And this is going to actually create the actual problem. This is just so that we can create this data quickly. And if I wasn't trying to explain all this, it could be done incredibly quickly because we create our JSON and we just go insert a bunch of posts. So this is going to create our post, and this returns the ID of a post. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back and use this update post meta function. We could probably use add post meta, but update post meta will call add post meta if it doesn't exist, which is just fine. And we're going to pass in the post ID, which is returned by this function here. And we're going to pass in the key, which will be first name and last name, just like in the original question where it's all caps and there's a space. And we're going to set the value based on from our JSON. So let's go ahead and do all of that real quick. So what I'm going to do is I have the 2011 theme open, and I'm going to put this inside of the theme. I know that's something you're not supposed to do, because if WordPress updates this theme and you update it from inside the WordPress admin area, then it's going to overwrite all of your changes. But this is for a video and it's development, and it doesn't really matter because I don't want to try to create my own design. I would just want to use what they have, and they have a good design for this. So I'm going to go into my functions file. I'll tell you what. I'm going to go to I don't know. I got to pick a file. If I do my functions file, it might get loaded multiple times, and it always creates like 2 or 3 of the same thing, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to use page.php because I think this should load this once. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that JSON. So I'm going to say movies equal, and I'm going to use the function JSON decode, and that is going to take this JSON and it's going to turn it into an array of objects. So what we're going to say is for each, and we're going to pull in movies as a movie. And what I'm going to do is say my post ID, because I'm going to assume this is going to pass. It's going to be equal WP insert post. I'm going to pass an array here. I'm going to set my post title equal to my movie title, and that's being pulled from this right here. And then our post status, I'm going to set this to publish. And my post author, just to make sure this doesn't fail, it's going to be equal to 1 because I only have one author in this blog. Then we're going to run @update post meta, and I'm going to set that post ID from the one returned from this function. And then what I'm going to do is set the field to first name, and this is going to equal to our movie first name. And I'm going to duplicate this, set this to last name, and then I'm also going to change this over here to last name. So if I open up, I can close this blog out. If I open up this sample page, and I'm going to comment this out because this is completed, hopefully, and we go and view all our posts in the blog, you can see that we have these 7 new posts. And what I'm going to do is just trash this one real quick. And I'm going to actually move this to the trash just so that it's, or delete it so that I don't even have to worry about metadata and stuff on that one. So you can see I've put in these 7 blog posts here, and it was a lot faster than it would have been if I had to do this manually. And if I just view one of these, you can see that they have the custom fields set for the first name and last name. And one thing I want to point out is I have 2 of the same guy. If we look at Smokey the Bandit, there's also the Cannibal Run. He directed both of these movies, so we have this guy in here twice. So let's go ahead and do the next part. So now that we have the data in, we're ready to start working on the actual problem itself. And the problem was we want to pull out the custom fields in WordPress in alphabetical order. So let's do that, and it's really easy to do this. And the way I want to do this is I'm actually going to work with the MySQL, the SQL query directly with the database. So here I'm connected to my MySQL database. I'm going to set this to use the WordPress database I have set up. And what I'm going to do is if I do show tables, you can see here are tables in WordPress. And we have 2 tables. We have this post meta, we have WP post. And you can imagine the WP post is going to contain these 7 posts. If we go back to our dashboard to the post page, here are 7 posts. The post metadata, or the post meta, actually contains the information for these custom fields. So this right here, this custom fields first name and last name, this is in this WP post meta table. And we can see that because if I say select, I'm going to do it all lowercase, select star for WP post meta. And here you can see that for post ID number 5, and there's 2 of these, we have one for first name and one for last name. And if I look at the URL up here, post 5 is up here, and you can see where it's pulled both of these out. So this is where we can actually access this data, and you can see it's really easy to find all of this. So if we want to pull it out in alphabetical order, what we can do is we can say select, and this time I'm going to be capitalized because it's easier for me to see this, from WP post meta. And what we're going to look for is we want to select, and I'll tell you what, I'm going to just say select my meta value, and I'm going to say select this as my last name. And what this will do is you can see we have in this selection here the columns that we have access to. It's going to take meta value and it's going to select it as last name. So if I just run this query real quick, you can see that we have last name up here. And I'm going to run the query before that real quick so we have this data. And we want to select it where we actually have a last name, or where the meta key equals last name. Because we don't care about this WP template, and we don't care about this edit lock and all this stuff. We only care about the last name and first name information. So I'm going to say where my meta key equals last name, and this needs to be last name. Run this again and see now we're selecting only the last names. We're not getting this right here, and we're not getting our default up here. We're only getting last names. And what we want to do is order this by name. So you can see right here he says he wants alphabetical order. So we'll say order by the meta value. We run this and you can see now this is an alphabetical order. But our problem is we're selecting 2 need hems. We only need one of those. So we're going to add on here group by our meta value as well. And this is actually the wrong order for that. This needs to be right here. Group by meta value. Now you can see we only have one need hem. Now if you have a space on this, like if I did need hem with a space trailing it, which is so easy to miss, you'll get this twice. So that's just something to watch out for. But that's actually an error on your part and not the query itself. So you can see we've pulled out these 6 people, and this is really easy. This was very easy to do. It wasn't a lot of work, but I want to make it a little more challenging because you remember we put in the first name and the person's last name. So I'd like to be able to pull that out too. And if I just run this, it's really easy to get that out. But no, I'm sorry, it's not really easy to get that out. And I say it's not easy to get this out because we're searching where the meta key equals last name. But if you remember up here, to get the first name, we have to do where we have the first name. So you might think, well, what I'll do is I'm just going to say where we have meta key last name, or I have the meta key equal to first name. But if I do this, you can see now we're getting first names and last names. And you can see I have an error right here, and I forgot about that error. And I can't remember which movie this guy directed. And you see here's a space right here, and it just bugs me because it pushes spaces. If you have leading spaces, it pushes it to the top. And I don't know who has that space in their name. It's for post number 10. So let me go change that real quick. And I'm just going to kind of cheat and go straight in here so I can make sure I get this right. And this is an error on my part from that JSON file. So update this. Now if I run that same query again, he's got put where he's supposed to go. Okay, so what's our problem? Well, we're searching or the meta key equals first name. So it's pulling these out as separate items. It's not pulling out as one where it should be first name and a last name column. So this is where we're going to have to do a little bit more advanced stuff. So we pull this back out normally again. We're going to have to interjoin this database table. So while we're looking for only last name fields, we're going to need to, when we get to this point where we get to this particular row, or like right here, as it's looping through this and we get to this last name, we're going to search on the table again for the corresponding first name. So how do we do that? Well, we can do that with a join. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to alias. Remember how we did this meta value as last name? I'm going to do the same thing with our table name. I'm going to reference this as table 1 or T1. And what I'm going to do is say select table 1's meta value as last name, and we're searching where the meta key on table 1 equals last name. We're going to group by table 1's meta value, and we're going to order by table 1's meta value. And if I run this, you can see there's no changes over to our results. We're only just specifying this more specifically in our query. And we're doing this because we're about to use the exact same table name as table 2. We can do that because we're going to go right after we say from. We're going to say inner join, and we're going to inner join on WP post meta. So we're joining on the same table. And we're going to alias this as table 2. We're going to say we want to join on post meta on, and here we're going to say where our table1.post ID equals our table2.post ID. And this is going to grab the same thing that matches it. But if we're not careful, this will also grab every single other custom field and not just the first name and last name. So we're going to say and where our table2 dot meta key equals first name. So if I run this here, we're going to get the same. Nothing changes, but we don't get any errors either. So what we need to do is we need to say select. So let me go all the way back. It takes a long time for this to move. We're going to add table2 dot meta value as our first name. And I've run this. Now you can see that we're selecting the first name or the first name and the last name on here. So that's going to be our completed query, and you can see it did this very quickly. It wasn't a lot of work for it to do because we did it all in one query. And just to kind of recap, we can see we're selecting, and I'm going to pull this out and put it on multiple lines. So let me change my syntax to SQL, and right here, and right here, and our where, and our group by, and our order by. Okay, so here's the columns that we're selecting. We're selecting our meta value for table 1, which is going to be last names, because we're not even, this is not the join. This is where we're selecting right here for last names only. So we get that as a last name. And while we're doing this in the same research, on our original search, I guess, we're also going to go ahead and group by the meta value and order by the meta value. And this is used so we don't get two of the same last name. Which, by the way, might be bad. It might be better to say by table1 meta value and table2.meta value. And by doing this, then we're getting by the first name and last name, because you might have two directors with the same last name. But I don't have that in my thing, and I guess I'll leave it because it probably won't affect it at all. Okay, so we're grouping by the last name and the first name. And what we're doing, so we're selecting from this table, and we're selecting where we have where our last name. We're grouping by these first name and last names. We're ordering by their last name, and we're changing this table name so we don't write it all out as table 1. So you can see that's kind of where we're referencing table 1. It's kind of like the original query. Now this inner join, which is all done pretty much on its own line, is actually where we are connecting to this table again to pull information again. It's kind of recursive. And we're grabbing this table as table 2, and we're saying on our table 1 post ID equals table 2 post ID. We can do that because if I select star from WP post meta, you can see that our last name post ID is 5 and our first name post ID is 5. So we're searching this on where these IDs match. So when we do this, first of all, it's going to find both of these right here. And any other custom field, if you add another one to post 5, it'd get put in here too. So we're saying and our meta key equals first name. So we're only grabbing this one now. And because this is kind of joined back into this, we can select this as first name. So that's everything that's going on here. And once you understand how this works and what it's doing, it's so much easier. So what we're going to do now is, now that we're able to grab, and if I run this original query again that we've written out, and let me go ahead and add this group by table2.meta value. So it's very unique. If I had two people with the last name Spielberg, then it would be Steven Spielberg and the other guy Spielberg. So let's go ahead and copy this query, and let's actually create a page for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a custom page template. So I'm going to create a new page. I'm going to start a new file called page-all directors. And I'm going to do this as a custom page template because this is the easiest way to create custom pages in WordPress. If not the only way, it might be the only way. So what we're going to do is we're going to set our template name, and this is the only thing that WordPress is referencing here. I can name this file anything I wanted. The reason I name it page dash and then the theme template name is because when it's listed in alphabetical order, I can look and I can say, where's my custom page? And I can go look and see page dash and I know where it's at. So it's just for myself. So we're going to call this all directors. And I'm going to go ahead and create this page here. So I can say new page. And over here on the right side in page attributes, I'm going to set the template to all directors. And I'm going to set my title to all directors as well. So publish this page. If we go back to WordPress, you can see WordPress automatically adds this page here, so all directors, and it's an empty page template. So to fix this, what I'm going to do is say get header, and we're going to another one for get footer. And if we look at this now, you can see that WordPress has it's just gotten the header and the footer files to make this look properly and make it match everything else. So the next thing that we need to do is we're going to go to our page template, and I'm going to copy this whole bit of HTML code and paste it in here. And the things I'm going to change is we don't need the comments, and we don't need our get page template part because I don't want to use a partial, if you will, where the actual code is handled in a different place. I'm going to just handle it here. Because this is a page. This page is specific to this page, and it's never going to be used anywhere else, so I don't see it needing to be a template or a partial. So what we're going to do here is we need to query and get these posts, which we had over here in our query. So what I'm going to do is up here in the header, before we even load anything, or the top of the page before we even load anything, with our get header. I imagine a lot of queries have already taken place, but what we're going to do is say directors equal, and here we're going to say WPDB, which is the WordPress database class, and we're going to get the results for this particular query. So this is going to find all of the directors, and then what we're going to do is we're going to loop through these directors. So I'm going to put an ordered list on here. And one sec, let me go ahead and go to this page template. I forgot. I'm just going to grab this HTML in here, paste it in here, and I'm going to make it a little more specific to my needs. We don't want to do this right here. And we'll leave it like this. So if we just look at this page in WordPress now, you can see it matches everything else. So in our content div right here, so let me add some spacing around this. Here we're going to create an ordered list. And we're going to say PHP for each directors as a director. And for each. And I'm going to create a list item for this. And I'm going to echo out my director last name. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to change this. I'm going to say implode. And I'm going to implode with a comma and a space. And I'm going to create an array for my director last name and my director first name. So if I run this, you can see now we've gotten these 6 directors and we've displayed their first name and last name properly. And this is one of the very cool things about the WordPress database get results method, is that it automatically puts these in object form and they are an array. So it gets these results and it automatically displays it properly for you. Now this right here, this is just my way of doing this. Another way of doing it would be to create the list item and echo out the director last name, comma space, echo the director first name. And you can see this is a lot shorter because we're not calling this, and I could change this to join, which would almost make it the same. But PHP, I think, recommends that you use implode because it goes with their explode method or function. I just prefer doing it this way. I don't know. Anytime I'm displaying a first name and last name, this is just the way that I do it. There's a chance. I mean, now PHP is not object oriented, and you have to wrap like everything you want to do in a function name. I couldn't just create. I mean, PHP, I could shorten the syntax here with PHP 5.4 to just being an array like this and doing it. But when I see it like this, then I want to call .join like this. But that doesn't work. PHP doesn't let you do that. They don't even let you do this, and I'd be okay with that too, but I can't do it. So normally, you know, you just call .join and comma space, and it's done. But PHP, you have to wrap everything in a function call for the most part. So I'm going to leave it like this. This is just the way that I do it, and if you don't like it, you can do it the other way. So here we go. We've gotten the first name and last name, and here's where we get to the next part of this whole thing. And the next part, okay, so we've done the first part. We've grabbed all the directors and we've displayed them out here like this. The next thing that he wants to do is he wants to set it up, and it's down here somewhere. He wants to set it up where you can grab the first letter. Okay, so we have these directors. He wants to make it where we grab the first letter and display links and just say, click on, I want to see all the directors that have the first name or the first letter that starts with A. And I want to see all the directors that have a letter that starts with the letter R. The only website that I know that does that I can think of right now is GameFAQs.com. Hopefully their design hasn't changed too much. If you go to a game, you have like this right here, A through Z in numbers. And you can click on J or whatever, and it shows you all the games that start with J, and you do all this other stuff. So that's essentially what we're going to do here. And to do that, let's look at it. We have to query our database, and this is a very short query. We want to say select, and I'm going to run the function substring for our meta value, and we're going to do 1, 1, which is going to grab the first letter. So substring grabs the first letter, and I'm going to show you, and PHP has the substring method. So let me exit out of the page at the top before we load anything. And I'm going to echo out, and I'm going to say substring, and I'm going to echo out the word hello world. And if I do 0, 1, which replicates that one in MySQL, you can see we get the letter H. And you can see 0, 1 has grabbed H. If I do 1, 1, I might just grab the E. It does. So that's the difference between PHP's and MySQL's substring. But this is going to only grab the first letter. So that's what substring does. It grabs a substring or part of a string. So in our query, we're grabbing the first letter from our WP post meta. And we want to do where our meta key equals last name, because we don't want to do it for all of them. Run this. And you can see now we're getting all these letters. If I remove this, then we're going to get letters for their first name and last name. And I don't know, this is going to be that default, and I don't know where the P's coming from because I don't know what's all in this database. And we get ones and stuff. So in part of this, you can see that we're grabbing a couple of the same letters. And we can see this a lot easier if I say order by the meta value. You can see we get a bunch of ones, we get 2 H's, 2 R's, 3 S's. So we can filter this down if we say select distinct rows. And you can see now we're only grabbing each one of these once. 1 S, 1 1, and things like that. And what I want to do is I'm going to add my where again. So where our meta key equals last name. So now you can see that I've got a problem. Oh, this is not right. This is supposed to be last name, like so. Okay, so now you can see we're only grabbing 6 rows. And that's because all of our directors have different starting last names. And this is ordered in alphabetical order, so this is our query to do this. And there's an article on this where I actually learned how to do this, because I'd never actually pulled out the first letter. I've thought about it, you know, walk around the house thinking, now if I was going to build, like on the iPhone, you know, I'm sure Android devices have it as well. If I was going to build a list of letters that I have, how would I do this? And this is how you do it, apparently. So the thing is, though, if you look, there's a website called Explain Extended, which is just the coolest website I've ever found. He writes about this stuff, and here's where he got it from Stack Overflow. He said, how to produce character lists for first letters in the columns by database. So he said, let's create a sample table of 1 million records, and this is just a brilliant way of doing this to make sure that you can see how fast it is on large scales. And if you know SQL and you're not like, if you're like me and you're just kind of like, you play around with it, but you don't like master it, then this SQL code is probably like very interesting to you, because it's like, I was like blown away by what all goes on in here. So definitely take a look at this website, and I'll put a link of this in the YouTube video if I remember. If I don't, like, post a comment like, hey man, you forgot the link. But basically you can see that it does exactly what we have, and it grabs these 26 letters, but it takes it about 400 milliseconds or so, or a minute, 1.6 seconds, I'm sorry. So 1600 milliseconds. So the thing that he shows here, and I can never get this to work. I've run this on multiple database, or multiple different ways of running against a MySQL database using the same creation that he used, table creation up here, and I can't get it to work. It always fails. But here what you can see is that he drops it down to almost an instant 4 milliseconds. So from 1600 milliseconds to 4 milliseconds for the exact same result. So it's very impressive that he was able to do that with just creating this function and this custom query with a subquery in here. So what I was getting at by showing you all this is that this is not the fastest way of doing this. In fact, it's very slow if you have a lot of records. Where I actually found this on Stack Overflow, because I didn't find his blog first. He said for 1,700 records, your solution's okay. But if you have 100,000 records, then the distinct becomes very inefficient. So that's where this blog article comes in very handy. So for my particular case with 6 rows, this is perfectly fine. So I just wanted to point that out, that this is not something you want to do on a very large scale website. If you're doing a large scale website, you're probably going to want to try to look at something like this that's a little bit more advanced to set up, but it's definitely worth it in the long run. So let's go back and put these letters on the page, and we're going to do that by coming up here and saying letters equal WP get results. Put that in here. So we're going to have to query the database twice on this page, and I'm going to select this as letter, because WordPress automatically takes these here and makes it, or these column names that we alias or set as, or using as, or if we just use meta value, and it actually makes it available to us on these objects as properties. So we're taking these letters, and what I'm going to do is just create another ordered list, and I'm going to put a list item inside of here, and I'm going to style this directly, which I know is a bad thing to do. You're not supposed to do it this way, but I don't want to try to find the style sheet and put it in here and stuff. So list style is going to be none. Display is going to be inline. And what I'm going to do is echo out my letters. Oh, I'm sorry, I did not make the loop. So PHP for each letters as a letter, and for each, move this up, and I'm going to echo out that letter. So if we go back over here and view the page again, you can see we have these letters that are available to us. And now the fun part, we need to make it where this actually filters this list. So to do that, I'm going to make these a link. So let's wrap this whole thing in anchor tag, and we're going to set our link to, and I'm going to echo out, and I'm going to use a function, and I forgot the function again. WordPress link to with query string. This is how I found it originally, and it's called a function called add query argument. So we're going to do this, add query arg, and we're going to add it to, our parameter is going to be director, or I'm sorry, letter, and we're going to set this to a string to lower for our letter. And I'm going to do the string to upper on this one so that it is capitalized. So if I go back over here and I reload the page, you can see we have these links. And the reason this function is super handy and is better, I think it's better, is because if you can see we have a query argument up here already. When I click on this, it adds to it, automatically adding the ampersand and all that stuff. So it's a lot easier to make this work. So what we're going to do here And let me look and see if I can get rid of this big header image. And doesn't look like I can, easily at least. Okay, so let me go ahead and go back. Okay, so I just wanted to make it right on to scroll down every time I click on one of these links. So now let's set it up so that we can find by this letter and that we don't, so that it only shows the corresponding directors. So what I want to do first is just show you how this actually works. Let me go back up to our really long query where we find these last names. What we're going to do is say where our meta key equals last name. So we're right here where meta key equals last name. And we're going to say and our table1.meta value equals, or I'm sorry, is like. I'm going to say and percentage, and that's going to be our wildcard character. And you can see it only finds the last name starts with A. And this particular database setup is in case sensitive, so I can do lowercase or capital A. F will pull up this one and whatever else. So this is how we're going to do this. So if we go back to our original query up here, we have our where right here. We're going to add that, and we're going to say and our table1.meta value is like, and I'm going to put in a director letter and a percentage after that. So we need to create this variable here. So to get this, I'm going to say director letter equals, and here I'm going to say filter input. And this function filter input, you may have seen the one called filter var. And this lets you take in a string or whatever input that you want and filter it and do validation or sanitization, I guess, to make sure that it's valid or clean. But we're doing filter input, which lets us pass in input underscore get. And this input underscore get is going to allow us to access these get parameters up here. And what we want to do is we were looking for the one called letter up here. So we're looking for letter. And the super cool thing about using this particular function like this is that, as you may know, if I set it to get letter like this and letter doesn't exist, or I'm sorry, if this query parameter doesn't exist, normally and you'll get an error that says undefined index or undefined key letter on our get array. But if you use this function, then it'll automatically just return null by default. And even if the key doesn't exist, it doesn't matter, it returns null. So it's very handy in that. But it also lets you come in here and say filter validate reg expression. Okay. And I got lucky on that because I was about to do the PHP. I was about to go to the PHP docs to get this whole thing because I didn't know it off the top of my head. Apparently I did. I didn't know I knew it. So this is going to let us validate whatever letter comes through here with a regular expression. So the fourth parameter is array, and we're going to specify, and I don't like this. I think this is the worst way they could have done this, but you have to specify options equals an array, and then we specify the reg expression. And here's going to be a reg expression. We're going to say we're looking for it starts with an A through Z character and it ends with an A through Z character like this. So it has to be, this is going to be basically, it has to be one character long and it has to be alpha or alphabetic. So if we exit out of our page and we look at our letter or director letter, and I'm going to do var dump on this so you can see this, what type it is. Okay, so we don't have it on here, it's null. If I set and letter equals A, I forgot to add an ending on this. Okay, so reload the page, and you can see string 1, and we got string 1 letter long, and it's an A. Now, if I change this to a 5 or a number character, you can see it's false. And if I make it null, you can see it's false. But if I remove it altogether, then you can see it's null. And what this tells me is it has to be, and if I do more than one character long, it's false because it doesn't validate properly. If it starts with a number, it's false because it doesn't validate properly. So this allows us to make sure that we're getting a single letter. So what I'm going to do is say if my director letter is not null, or if it is not false, or if it's true, then I'm going to say my director letter equal to, I'm going to do two things to it. I'm going to do one, say MySQL real escape string, and this is going to escape it because if something happens with PHP and it doesn't catch it, and it doesn't run the regular expression properly, there's a chance you can still run a MySQL injection or do something bad to the database. So we're going to escape it just to be on the safe side, but I don't think this function would ever do anything really, unless somehow you passed in, like, if I can do it like that right there, and if I'm sure you can see it, unless you have some smudge on your screen or something. Let me try to zoom in on it. You can see it like that. It's that letter with something over the top of it. This should pass as false. If I comment this out, you can see it's false anyways. But if something happened on your server and it didn't catch that, you'd want it escaped anyways. So what we're going to do is we're going to escape it, and we're also going to run string to lower on our director letter to make it lowercase, just to be on the safe side. And if this is false or null because of this being incorrect or not there, I'm going to set the director letter by default to the lowercase letter a. And I'm not going to run MySQL escape string on this because I am setting this and the user's not. So let me remove all of this, and if I load this page, you can see now we're only pulling up directors that start with the letter A. And same with the letter F, or Spielberg is going to be the letter S. Z is going to be this guy. And I don't want to try to say his name because I'm afraid I'm going to say it incorrectly. And you can see that if I run the one Needham, how you pronounce that, that you can see we only get one. It doesn't display it twice, even though he does direct 2 movies that are on this website. So that is part 2 of this original question. How do I get these letters to show up? And you can see that we have properly sanitized and validated it. And we're getting these letters here. We're only selecting the first one. And it's distinct, so we won't get 2 letter A's or 2 letter N's or whatever. And we're selecting all the directors here, and we're looping through it. So the last thing that we need to do is we need to set it up so that when you click on one of these directors, that it actually shows all the movies associated with these directors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new page real quick. So I'm going to create a new page template first. So director, I'm going to call this director movies, and set my template name to director movies, and go ahead and create that page real quick while I'm thinking about it. Set this page template to director movies and call it movies by director. So make this a little bit better here. So I'm going to publish that, and you can see it adds us to the main navigation. There's a good chance I can go to the menus link and remove it there because that's not where you'd want it. And no, it does not look like I can do that. So we'll just ignore that. That'll be fine. What I actually did originally is I set it up and I said we're going to get the director. And first, let me just create the link to this page real quick. So this right here where I want to link to this guy, this is actually going to be wrapped in an anchor tag, and I'm just going to go to page ID equals 16 because I saw that when I clicked on this link, his page ID is 16, and I'm going to set my director last name, or my director, equal to, and here I'm going to echo out, let me go back over here, string to lower, and I'm going to echo out my director last name here. So if I click on this link, you can see we're going to this page ID 16 and director equals Needham. Let me do this again, and you can see that here. So what we're going to do here on this page is we're going to say our director equals, and we're going to filter filter input for input type of get, and we're looking for the director, and we're going to let's just make sure that we have it. I'm not going to try to validate this, so I'm going to say if director, then our director equals MySQL real escape string for my director. Else my director, else if we don't have this, then we're going to run header. We're going to go back to our page or index.php page equals, and I'm assuming this will be 15. It's 14. Okay, so if I go to this link right here, even though it's here by accident, it redirects me back to this page. And then if I go to here, then I stay on this page because I've actually passed in the last name. So once we've actually gone through here and we validate it and we've gotten this input, and what I could do actually right here is I could pass this in as the if right here, which would do the exact same thing, and I only have to do that, just kind of put it together, but I don't really like doing that in this particular case. But I'll leave it here anyways because I don't want to move it around. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to find all the movies by a director's last name. So let me copy this last name here. And let's just take a look and see how we can do this. So we're going to select the post ID from our WP post meta, where the meta key equals last name, and our meta value equals in this last name here. So here you can see that we have selected all the posts for 5 and 6, because remember this guy has 2 movies. He has Cannonball Run and Smokey and the Bandit on this site. So you can see here that this query right here is found where we're only looking for last names that equal need him, and we're getting the post ID because we want to get this movie. So what I'm going to do is just run this query right here and get the post IDs. And we're going to clean this up in a second if you know why this might be bad. But we're going to say post equal, and here I'm going to run WP DB get results for this query. And I know you could probably run a WordPress function. I think you have the post equal get post, and you can set post IDs equal, and then you can do comma separated. However, I don't trust WordPress. I don't trust WordPress to make the most efficient query for my purposes. So in this case, like this, I'm not going to trust WordPress to get the post properly. I have a feeling that WordPress is going to make 2 or 3 queries to get various information, or it's not going to do a good join, or it's going to pull too much and more than I actually need. And in this particular case, I only want the post ID, and later I'm going to get the post title. But we'll work on that in a second, because right now we just want to get these posts. And I'm going to copy all of this and just overwrite the bottom right here. So we get this page. We're not looking for director last names, letters here. And I don't want all of this either. And what we're going to do is just create an ordered list with the list item. We're going to loop through for each post as a post ID. No, as a post, I guess. And for each, and what we're going to do is I'm just going to create a list item. I'm going to create an anchor tag equal to p equals, and here I'm going to echo out. So echo out or get the title for our post ID, and here I'm going to echo out post ID. And this is actually post underscore ID, like so. So if I go back to our page and reload, you can see here we've pulled out these 2 movies, and I can actually click on this because I already knew how WordPress linked to these posts. And if you have a custom permalink structure set up, it would automatically redirect to the proper URL for this. So if we go back to this Hal Needham's movie page, you can see these 2. Now here's where we're making a huge mistake. we're calling get the title on this. Well, we have two movies. So you remember this query right here returns two IDs. We're looping through these two IDs, and then we're trying to get the title from that post ID. So it's making a query for every loop in this loop, and it's querying the database saying, well, get the title for this one, and get the title for this one. So we're going to do another join on here. We're going to do an inner join again, like we did last time earlier. And we're going to say inner join onto our WP post table on where our WP post dot ID equals our WP post meta dot post ID. And I'm going to select the post ID, and I'm going to select, and here I'm going to do it from the WP post table dot post title. So if I run this, where's our error? Inner join. Oh, I need to move that over. So let me do this all over again. This is supposed to go right here. So let me just do this one ahead like I should have. But post title. Come back after the from before the where, and we're going to set inner join on WP post on WP post dot ID equals WP post meta dot post ID. So here you can see that in a single query, we're actually getting the ID and the post title. So let me just copy this whole query, I guess. I'm just going to copy this inner join because the rest of it's pretty easy. So this goes right here, and we're going to do also WP post dot post title. And realistically, you could probably get by with this because these two tables right here, they don't share this particular column. But I feel better just specifying and being direct that we are selecting from this table and don't have to worry about any ambiguous ambiguous columns. So we reload this page, and you can see the exact same thing. Now the difference is some reason it pulled this out. If I undo this, that is very weird. And I'm not sure how WordPress is getting this post title, but somehow this get results is affecting this right here, which is beyond me, but I'll just do movies by this director because this director's last name right here is not right. And what I could do is just say meta value, and I could pull this out, movies by, and I'm just going to echo out post 0 meta value and movies by need him. So I get it. The way it was in the database is the way it's displayed here. Now, a problem that I saw coming as I was writing this is that this is not a very good way of keeping up with director last names. Normally, in a real website and not a WordPress blog, what you would do is you would actually you'd have a table of probably your directors, and you would put in, like, I have a director called Steven Spielberg, and you'd put in his first name and last name, and then when you create a movie, you would have a check mark or however you do this, and you would check, well, Steven Spielberg directed this movie. And then you would link to Steven Spielberg's ID, because if we just look at, let's just say select star from the post, and this is not formatted properly, so let's do post meta. As you can see that we have the post ID, and this is unique, or the meta ID even, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's one for every row. And what this allows is that you can easily find something by meta ID. So you might have one called director ID, and Steven Spielberg, which is right here, these two, he would have his director ID, which would be 9, and not 9 and 10. Because what's happening here that's making this difficult is we're searching by director need him. And if need him had any special characters or something that got messed up in the URL, then it wouldn't find any of his movies. So that's just something to keep in mind. Normally you would find page ID equals 16, director ID would equal, and let's just say we're going off of this particular table, 4 would it be his director ID. But this won't work, and there's really no way of getting that to work easily. So thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you found it helpful, and hopefully you enjoyed watching it. And thank you for watching this movie, or it's not a movie, it is and I forgot what it's called, a screencast. So thank you for watching the screencast, and goodbye.